Welcome. I'm Christy King, your host of the FanReach podcast. Each episode features conversations recorded over several weeks with experts in the sports entertainment business. From former NFL players and current sports business experts Kenyon Rashid and Brian Jones to FanReach's leadership team, you're going to hear insightful and instructive observations on the present and future of technology in the sports business. I hope you enjoy this podcast enough to look for more great conversations from us in future episodes. You can also follow FanReach on YouTube and LinkedIn to keep up with the latest in sports mobile app technology. Let's get started. Why don't you talk to me about why FanReach is paying so close attention to analytics and what that has to do with betting, especially peer-to-peer betting. Peer-to-peer? Not peer-to-beer.
Well, it could be peer-to-beer eventually. That's what they want. That's why they give you a ton of alcohol in the casinos. Just keep you drunk and keep you betting.
Yes.
But it's an interesting dynamic how sports betting's coming online. I mean, it's obviously not approved at the federal level, so it's by individual state. Jersey was the first state to pass it. And FanDuel was quick to snap up a betting shop right outside of MetLife Stadium. So you literally can go and bet. The great thing that FanDuel and DraftKings did is they've had a 5-year head start at mining potential bettors. The daily fantasy was just a step toward the discretionary income being spent around gaming and betting. And so it's all about identifying who that new depositor is. And so when betting companies like BetMGM, DraftKings, FanDuel, and others do these sponsorships with these individual teams, the overall goal is to start mining out who those depositors are. So teams now have a responsibility to start identifying and tagging who those individual bettors may be. And guess what? The phone is going to be your betting station. And so that brings us to where FanReach is. FanReach is integrated in building those platforms. And so the disconnect that has happened so far is we are relying on teams to try to figure out how to integrate a BetMGM or a Caesars or a PointsBet or a Bet365, who all have sponsorships with individual teams, but are yet not integrated into their digital platforms. Our plan at FanReach is necessarily to go talk to Bet Online and these betting companies and come up with a way to integrate them into the app where they're actually getting affiliate information. That brings us to those analytics. Analytics and data are king. And I will say this, that phone is your identity. So teams need to start looking at the phone to start mapping out the identity for these audience members that are coming in the stadium or that they're engaging with remotely. That is what is the value to the betting companies. Right now, it's just based in sponsorship. But eventually, what we hope, and with the payment stack and working with companies like FanReach, is to start having the ability to build some revenue streams for the team outside of sponsorship that tie into some of this affiliate model. To do that, you've got to identify and you've got to have the right integrations. And that's really where I think FanReach is going to shine.
And as we've been saying from the jump, that it behooves teams to have a more holistic picture of who their fan is, because they're going to partner with betting entities, and that gaming company wants to know, well, who's your fan? Just like that sponsor would ideally want to know and have an overall picture of who's coming to your games. The same with the betting, even more so with that betting company. Like, what are their spending habits? What are they doing there in the stadium? All that, wrapped together is going to help you leverage the heck out of your fan base and your customer if you're a sporting team, even a broadcaster.
And if you just look at the growth around daily fantasy, revenues have exploded for the NFL, for the NBA, based on daily fantasy. When me and BJ were at the NFL in 1999, discussing a real-time play-by-play betting system with them that you could bet in game called Sports Action. We were told at that time that the NFL would never touch fantasy because it was too closely related to gambling. Yep. Until somebody made $1 off of it.
Yep.
All of a sudden now it's a game of skill. Daily fantasy was approved, and now in 2006, the laws prevented online gaming from offshores. And so they started to mark out how they are going to regulate this back in 2006. So we've been around this for a very long time. And so what I've seen in the last 2 years, indicative of where sports betting means into the whole sports world, is just look at the revenue. Just look at the collective bargaining agreements that are being structured. Me and BJ being the benefit of the new 10-year collective bargaining agreement that the NFL signed based on increased revenue potential and forecasting that they have around sports betting. And what I can tell you is that it is generating a lot of growth. And so we see it as millennials and Generation X's that are walking around with phones that no longer want to be a viewer. They want to be involved in interacting with the game. It's my son. It's that generation, 22, 23-year-olds. They do not sit still. They bet. They want to be, there's some winner or loser in every game. And I really do believe that is who we're talking with all of the integrations and things that we're doing around FanReach and working with the teams. Is let's figure out a way to attract them and engage them in these games through the betting.
Couple things come to mind. We've talked before about who it is that benefits from betting. I mean, obviously, most people my age or our age, I'll lump us all together, look at, we just think of Vegas or Atlantic City. Like you're walking in, you're betting on the outcome of something. But one of the things that I learned from having lived in Vegas as long as I did is there is a huge amount of middle stuff that happens. It's not just the winner of the game that you're betting on. It's all this interstitial stuff. Who's going to make the next 10-yard, move? Are there going to be 3-pointers? Are there going to be, and that's just football. Those guys, those super smart guys that come up with things to bet on,
props,
are incredible engagement tools. If you think about it, it's the fantasy stuff, and maybe this is just amazing to me and not to a lot of people that follow this, but I was really taken aback by all the interstitial stuff, which makes me think about engagement games, period. So the as you said, the fantasy games.
What betting is, what daily fantasy is about community.
Yeah.
It's about it's about being part. And if you really think about a team and their fan base, it's already a built-in community, right? So you can have one community versus another community for bragging rights. Well, what better way to brag than to bet? And so if you can imagine a Giant fan being able to compete against a Cowboy fan, you have to figure out where they can compete at. They can't do it on the field, can't do it in the stands right now, but I can do it by betting against you. I can do it by being part of a daily fantasy group that is part of that betting. And so really what fantasy did, it has allowed people in my age group, like me and BJ, to communicate, to be part of the same community. We can have our own league. We can get together once a week and trade. It's a communication thing. So it's not just a winning and losing thing. It's also the community built around this sport. And so I think when the NFL and the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, when they recognize the power that this particular platform has for their game, all of a sudden they're like, hey, we need to figure out a way to tap into that. And again, going back to how people bet, it's basically a digital and electronic signature now. Whether you're in casino, out casino, when it comes to sports betting, we already know what the device is going to be. So my question is, why are the device and companies not communicating to the betting companies to figure out how to best engage within these apps, within their normal structure of using their phones? Because I'm not going to go in the stadium and download something new. I'm not going to go in the stadium and download a betting MGM app. I want it to be within my team app, but I want it to be easy to use. And number one, I want to make sure that it's part of my journey for that particular game day. That's where I think the opportunity is.
And that's the single sign-on we're always discussing it as well, so you don't have to download additional apps. But to your community communication piece, you can throw sports radio in there.
Yep.
that the whole advent of sports radio way back when, up in New York City, WFAN, it was about building a community and bringing in all these different voices to opine on sports, not gambling per se, but it's a back and forth, which is the same premise of gambling, except there's a transaction, there's an exchange of monies. And so, but to your point, it's also as far as the integration, here's what we have to impart upon, folks, is that there is not a ton of heavy lifting associated with what we're proposing via FanReach. There are phases to our approach. There are certain steps. I like these analogies. I had Ray last time we talked. I was thinking about this again, and our phased approach is similar to my yoga practice. What I love about yoga is I may not do the full expression of a particular pose, but that's all right, because in yoga, you go at your own pace. That's the key. Hell, sometimes I fall out in hot yoga the first 30 minutes. Sometimes I make it to the end of the class. It just depends on that particular day. But there are phases. One day I can do the pose in its full expression. Sometimes the other pose, I just got to build upon that pose. And it's the same with the strategy we're outlining as far as our integration via a FanReach to these teams, is that, okay, you don't have to have a wholesale platform built on day one. As you bring on sponsors, as you bring on additional vendors, we just add those onto your platform, your existing platform, and we tell them, hey, everything has to run through our modalities, not yours, as they've done in the past, because we want more control of our audience and we want more control of the data. So we need to dismiss with this view that this is going to be a complete overhaul of our systems and you're going to come in and ask us to surrender all our existing relationships. No, not at all. We're just telling you there's a way to take control of your data, your fan, your audience right now, and there's a phased approach to doing that.
Given that, let's talk about how you get from today to this, pretty heavily integrated betting, maybe even straight up gambling through the app. As you said, there's going to be phases to the law. There's going to be phases to the technology, and you're going to maybe offer different styles of betting or gameplay engagement, let's call it, for people that are 20 versus people that are 50, right? There's even phases to that. So talk a little bit about how the FanReach platform, in your guys' vision, gets people from, okay, today we have this cool little AR, win a free Pepsi at halftime game, to full on, in real time betting against the next 10-yard play. How do you get from here to there?
Well, I think the first thing you have to recognize is that not everybody wants to see a betting screen when they come into the stadium. So we have to, first of all, cleanse who these audience members are and start to move them into cohorts, which are like-minded, demographically, community-based groups, because I can't offer the same experience to everyone. So the first thing is to start to mine through that data. How do you do that? Well, first step, you got to get people to download your app. So we talk about a lot of stuff that you can do within the app, right? We talk about marketing cards and digital content. And we hear the competitors talking about this, but at the end of the day, the question always is, initially, if you walk into the stadium and you're going to one game, do you download a team app and put your credit card information in and start doing all of this? Probably not. It has to be kind of introduced to you slowly as you move along your journey. And so what the disconnect has been so far, because if you look at the numbers between downloaded apps between teams, you will find a big disparity. So even though they may have the same type of functionality within the app to be able to do all of these things, they're not doing the front part of that, which is, I got to figure out a way to get this in your hands and a way for you to download it and come to a game to start experiencing it. Then I have to identify who you are and what your patterns are as you move through that game in order to actually bring you back. And so what I say is, when I take this phone and I buy a ticket, I'm buying that ticket off of Ticketmaster. It's going into a Ticketmaster wallet that is built into the FanReachers platform. But my question is, why does it have to go to Ticketmaster? Ticketmaster is a ticketing app. It's a ticketing platform. It's not a payment platform. It's not an analytics platform. And by the way, Ticketmaster doesn't own your customer. You do. Your name is on the app. So if I'm a team, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Ticketmaster, that transaction that you run at the end, I'm going to run that. I'm going to go ahead and run that. And by the way, that payment data is going to tell me exactly from a credit card number if that individual has ever bought a season ticket. Has he ever been to a concession stand? Because we can do cross-referencing just on a credit card number, basically on the data that comes back from that. Number two, zip codes, things that people don't know that exist out of payments. So this is one of the reasons why I went into payments 5 years ago, was because I understood that a transaction is connecting you to that person and it's creating a journal of what he is doing. So if you don't have access to payment data, how can you truly track his movement throughout a venue, even though he's on the app? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the app doesn't talk to Levy's concessionaires point of sale. And it doesn't talk to Fanatics point of sale in your pro shop. And it doesn't talk to Park Hub, who's running your parking validation out front. What we want to do, and FanReach has the ability to bring all of that data together because we're integrated with those partners already. If you add a payment piece, and by saying this is, how do you start? You start simply by saying, I want to reconcile my data and my payment transactions. That is as simple as it gets. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. But the great thing is you already have a platform with FanReach. It's built. So all we have to do is start integrations through APIs to give you back that single dashboard that every business wants to look at top to bottom. How's my ticketing doing today? How's my concessions doing today? Oh, should I lower the price of a hot dog? Because guess what? We're playing the Texas Longhorns versus Oklahoma. We know Texas is going to be a blowout. We know a lot of Texas fans might be leaving early. We want to offer some extra hot dogs to them because they need it. That's a little dig at you, BJ. You know what I'm talking about.
And you're right. So whether you're dealing with NCR or Appetize or micros, it doesn't matter. You can integrate with those different platforms, but you tell them everything's going to run through our processing. Everything goes through us, and you're still our partner, but we're going to adjust how we've done business, previously. So it's a simple value proposition that we believe. And once we get a chance to walk people through it and they have a chance to digest it, they come to that realization as well.
Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of the FanReach podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. It's always a pleasure for me to hear the unique perspective on sports entertainment from Kenyon and BJ. Not many of us had the talent to play professional sports, so I feel like it's a pretty instructive experience to hear how they see the industry, having participated in sports as players, commentators, business owners, consultants, fans, and parents of fans, and now as experts helping us more clearly see the intersection of technology and entertainment. Be sure to follow FanReach on your podcasting platform of choice or YouTube and LinkedIn. That way you can keep up with the latest in sports mobile app technology from FanReach.